Hey guys, so in this video we're going to talk about how to become a smarter player in Fortnite Battle Royale. With the World Cup qualifiers going on, we're seeing a ton of new players make names for themselves, but we're also seeing a ton of established pros like Bizzle and Vivid consistently dominate. If you've ever watched one of their streams, their mechanics aren't as flashy or as insane as someone like Mongrel, so how do they continue to come out on top? The answer is their decision making and game IQs. If you're a fan of the channel, you've probably seen some of my GameSense 101 videos where I focus on different aspects of GameSense that everyone should work and improve upon. Some of the past topics have been positioning, movement, and I think my next video will be another GameSense 101 episode on loadouts and weapon combos. GameSense is extremely important and is very closely linked to becoming and being a smart player. Pretty much every smart player has a lot of GameSense and will use it to their advantage. Those GameSense videos though, they only cover one topic in depth. This video will be more of a general guide on how to not only use them in-game, but also how you should go about making decisions and actually becoming a smarter and more intelligent player. I'm going to break the video down into a few sections and I'll put timestamps on the screen now for each of them. Feel free to skip around, but I always suggest to watch the whole thing through to get a better understanding of the entire video. So let's jump right into it, starting with finding the right playstyle. A playstyle in Fortnite is essentially how you play out each game or each engagement. Some people like hot dropping tilted and pushing everyone they find. Other people enjoy being more passive, landing in isolated locations, looting up, then avoiding everyone until endgame. The smartest players in the world don't really have a set playstyle. So Vivid, for example, isn't someone who just fights everyone he sees and W keys like a maniac. He's not aggressive, but he's also not hiding all game, even though that's kind of what it feels like when you watch all these pros sitting there 1x1s for scrims and pro tournaments. If you want to become a smarter player, you need to understand and identify situations when you should be playing aggressive and when you should be playing passive. It's fine if your playstyle tends to be more on the aggressive side or more on the passive side, but you need to find a good middle ground that works for you. The unfortunate part is that there isn't a cookie cutter method to follow on when you should be aggressive and when you should be passive. So for example, someone like Tfue, you'll notice if he lasers a guy down to 50 HP, sometimes he'll go and push the guy and try to secure the kill. Sometimes he won't push the guy, but he'll stay where he is and spray down the guy's builds. And then other times, it's almost as if he forgets about the guy he just shot at. He'll either go and rotate or just turn his attention somewhere else. If you only have one playstyle, which is aggressive, you would just push the guy every single time, trying to replace his walls and get into his 1x1 to kill him. The thing is, I guarantee it won't work every time, and more often than not, you'll get third-partied and die. If you're always passive though, and you never try to apply pressure on people and push for kills, well, that also won't work. In arena and tournaments, you get points for each kill, so you're losing out on a potential point, but you're also losing out on potential loot, which is more important in these scenarios. Think of every person you kill as a walking loot llama filled with materials, ammo, guns, heals, shields, and more. Every time you kill someone, you can collect their loot and upgrade your loadout so you'll be better prepared for the next fight. That's why only playing a certain way and sticking to one playstyle is bad. You will never see a smart player make the same plays for every different and unique scenario. Sometimes it may look that way if you're watching Tfue play pubs and just dump on 15 bots, but even then there's a huge difference between aggression and calculated aggression, and those playstyles are different as well. So how can you actually learn when to be aggressive and when to be passive? I recommend playing a few matches while sticking to one playstyle, then switch it up and play another bunch of games with a different playstyle. So what I mean by this is hop into some games and play as aggressive as you can. You don't have to hot drop tilted, but get good loot and then push everyone you see and take as many fights as you can. When you start taking too much damage or you end up dying after a fight, you'll realize maybe you shouldn't have taken that fight or you shouldn't have pushed the guy because you got third-partied. You'll start to think about who's around you, is your loadout and material count good enough to fight, and how you should approach and position yourself in the fight. When you start playing really passive and you try to avoid as many fights as you can, you'll learn good rotations for how to avoid people, and you'll see situations where you could have third-partied to fight or just pushed a guy because of an advantage you had in positioning or loadout or whatever it may be. You should be thinking about how your passive playstyle either benefited you or hurt you in that scenario. Maybe you could have cleaned up a kill and you should have been more aggressive, but maybe you see zones on the other side of the map and you hear more fighting where you would have been engaged, then you know you made the right decision in playing it slow and safe. So after you play all these games sticking to one certain playstyle, your thought process should slowly change as you learn when it's best to be aggressive or passive, and from there you can find when it works best in each different fight and engagement you get into in game. The next tip to become a smarter player is to think ahead at all times. I have a Game Sense 101 episode on thinking ahead in gunfights, which is a hard skill to master, but you really want to be thinking ahead with everything you do and every decision you make. Right as you jump out of the battle bus, that's when your decision making process begins. You should be initially deciding where you want to land, how you'll glide in to get there, and then decide your loot path. All of these decisions should be made by thinking ahead and predicting all the possible outcomes of your actions. So if I land on a house and there's no shotguns, I should have already decided what I'd do, whether it be rotate to the next house or maybe just leave the location I'm at completely. And then what if someone lands on me? Again, the worst thing I can do is have a guy land on me and then panic because I don't know what to do. As you land, you should have already decided and made up your mind on what you'd do if someone tried to 50-50 you off spawn. Are you going to contest him for the chest? Are you going to land lower and hope you get a shotgun? If I were to land on a pump shotgun, the best move is to just pressure my opponent and W key him. But if I were to land on a hunting rifle, while it's pretty unlucky, I can just use my backup plan of disengaging and rotating to a different house, which is what I would have done when I originally decided what I'd do if I couldn't find any guns in my house. That was the other decision example that we just went over. This is what separates the best players in the world from other pros. You need to be thinking ahead and making your decisions based off all of that in game. A lot of you guys DM me on Twitter and Instagram and say that you always try to use my tips and tricks, but you kind of just space out in game and forget them. If that's happening to you, it means one of two things. The first cause could be that you're too focused on what you're doing currently. So if you're rotating mid-game and a guy is about to push you, you shouldn't be thinking about whether you're going to fight him or not. That should have been decided the second you saw him. If you're too busy thinking about whether you should build up or not, your opponent is already probably building above you for high ground and now you're really in a tough position. This can also happen with your mechanics if your building and editing is too slow or sloppy. When you're thinking about which building technique you'll use to get high ground, you're not thinking about what you're going to do when you get high ground, or how you're going to get to zone if you get the kill, or what you're going to do if you end up getting third-partied. It's impossible to think ahead and make the right decision when you're thinking only about what you're doing currently, like what ramp you're going to place or the keybinds you need to press to do a 90. The other cause of spacing out is that you're just not thinking. You can say that you are, but when you're blasting Lil Uzi and you have your brother next to you yelling in your ear, it's probably pretty hard to think. You need to get rid of all the distractions around you and keep reminding yourself in-game to think ahead for rotations, gunfights, loot paths, whatever it is, every 2 minutes or so. Just take a step back and think about what you're going to do for the next 2 minutes. Try and put a little sticky note on your monitor or TV that says, think ahead. Now, every time you'll notice it, you'll be forced to actually read it and follow my advice. It may sound stupid, but if you're having trouble remembering my tips, then this will definitely help you, I promise. Third tip, which should be the other half of your decision-making process, is to put yourself in your opponent's shoes. Imagine you saw an enemy running up a ramp. It's a lot harder to hit them if they're running side to side and jumping up and down, right? Think of all the annoying things or smart things you've seen someone do against you. One of the best examples is just spamming a wall with an AR. It's annoying, right? But it's really effective in applying pressure, stopping you from healing, wasting your materials, and keeping you from pushing up. You need to not only think about what you will be doing, but also what your opponent will do when he sees you make the action that you decided on. I know it's a lot to think about, and that's why becoming a smart player isn't easy. It's a lot easier to just see someone and just push them than it is to see someone, look around for other people or clues that other people are near you, make the decision on how you're going to approach the fight, think about what you're going to do if you get third-partied or your opponent surprises you with an RPG or explosives, think about how your opponent will react and respond to what you do, and then finally make your decision that way. That's like 6 different things you have to be thinking about all really quickly before you get into a fight, but that's what's so hard about actually becoming a really smart and intelligent player. If you watch smart players, a lot of the time they sit and wait before they push someone. They play the game very slowly because most of the time they're thinking ahead, they're putting themselves in their opponent's shoes, and they're making decisions instead of just rushing into the fight and playing it like a maniac. The last thing I want to talk about are mind games, which kind of fall under the topic of thinking like your opponent. Mind games are extremely important and hard to master, which is why I want to give them their own topic. A perfect example is when you have someone boxed up in front of you and you have a ramp between you guys and you're kind of both just sitting there looking at each other and waiting for the next move. You're thinking about the best way to get a shot on them by editing the ramp, and they're thinking about how they can get out, not take damage, and then kill you. TW has an amazing video on mind games and box fighting, which I'll leave a link to in the description, so make sure to go watch that. These box fighting scenarios are literally a 1v1 of wit and outsmarting each other. You've probably seen a pro player try to take another pro's walls while they're in a 1x1. The person inside the 1x1 or the box is turbo building the wall, but they're also constantly making edits. They're going for quick shots, faking editing, or just expanding their 1x1 and doing their best to outsmart the person who's trying to take their wall. They're thinking about what they would do if they were the one outside the box trying to take the wall. There's so many different variations and scenarios of mind games within box fights that it's kind of hard to go over all of them in one video, especially because no two opponents will play it the same way, and there's not one move that you can do that will always work. A really fun and good way to practice this is just to go into creative and box yourself up in a wooden 1x1, then have your friend try and replace your wall and try to kill you. Go for cheeky edits on them and try to get a quick shot off, or just catch them off guard by editing up and out. As long as you're practicing mind games and thinking about how your opponent will react and what they're thinking, then you're on your way to becoming a smarter player. Overall, to kind of sum the video up, don't stick to one play style. Instead, practice different play styles so you can understand when to be aggressive and when to be passive. Always think ahead on what you're going to do next, and then think about what your opponent will be doing when he sees you do that. Lastly, master mind games, go into creative and practice it, and make use of that brain of yours. So if you guys enjoyed this video and I helped you become a smarter player, be sure to drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications. Thank you to everyone using my code. You guys are the real MVPs. Also make sure to check out my Twitch, twitch.tv/itsJerian. We're coming up on 10k followers, and I'm going to start streaming full time there once I graduate. Otherwise, that's it from me, and I will see you guys in the next one. Later.